The history that objects have is important to us. And we show that because we put things in our home that have meaning for us. We are meaningful animals and we love meaning. And I think that art is about having meaning in your home.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Reynaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to people around the globe about their practice and passions in the field of print media and multiples. Hello, Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products. And in 1915, Ross F. George published the first edition of the Speedball textbook, which quickly became the superlative resource for artists and letterers of all ages and skill levels. In celebration of the 105th year anniversary of this debut, the 25th edition of the Speedball textbook has a convenient lay-flat construction and 120 pages of examples, contributors' works, and innovative technical insights. This will surely inspire and appeal scribes and enthusiasts across the spectrum of skill and experience. There's a link in the show notes. Hey, print friends, did you know Florence, Italy is home to SRISA? It's a leading institution for art and design education. It offers highly personalized instruction and experiential learning meeting American university standards for study abroad programs in fine art, liberal arts, and design. Educators who might be interested in teaching at SRISA can lead a faculty-led program utilizing its top-notch printmaking facilities in one of the world's most inspiring cities. To learn more, email info@srisa.org. And don't forget to mention the Hello Print Friend podcast sent you for exclusive discounts and perks. This episode is also brought to you by Legion Paper. Legion Paper is a fine art paper company that represents the best papers in the world. They either stock it, source it, or make it. With brands like Stonehenge, Somerset, Coventry, Reeves, Arches, and more, Legion is the best paper resource for every artist and printmaker's needs. Learn more about the variety of papers that Legion stocks at www.legionpaper.com. My guest this week is Rebecca Olsen. Rebecca is the president and CEO of SRISA, which for over 30 years has been teaching classes in the heart of Florence. We talk about her extraordinary childhood growing up around the school, the kind of experiences artists and students have when traveling outside their country of origin, AI in the arts, and so much more. Hi, Rebecca. How's it going?
Great. It's nice to talk to you, Miranda.
Very nice to talk to you too. I have been really looking forward to our chat today in this recording session. I have met you several times at conferences out there in the big wide print world, and it's always been an absolute delight. And so thank you for letting me borrow an hour of your afternoon and sitting down with me so I can pick your brain a bit and learn even more about someone that I admire.
Thank you so much. Likewise, the times that we've met, getting to know you and talking about our lives, our fathers, and I'm just really excited to learn a little bit more about what you do too via my experience being interviewed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would you please introduce yourself and let people know who you are, where you are, what you do?
Okay, my name is Rebecca Olsen. I am the president and CEO of Santa Reparata International School of Art in Florence, Italy. And where I'm from is one of those questions that when people ask me, it's complicated. I was born in Florence, and then we moved to the States when I was 6 years old. And now I'm back here, and I've been living in Italy for the last 25 years. That's a really brief summary of what I do and how I got here.
And so you mentioned that you were born in Florence and was there until you were 6. Tell me a bit about growing up and the landscape of art in a childhood with that backdrop, with an artistic father who started this school, which I'm sure we'll get into. But what role did art play in a young Rebecca's life in that context?
Wow, that's a huge question.
Yep.
Yeah, I basically, when you're a child of two artists who were their in turn also children of artists. My grandfather was an artist, my father, my mother, my stepmother, and then a good percentage of their friends as well. So I grew up around art, people making art, talking about art, being dragged to openings, which is what you do
Uh-huh.
with small children. You drag them
Yep.
in hopes only for food, which was generally how we bargained for it. It was like, will there be food? Will it be good food? And will there
Yep.
be other children? So that was basically when there are other art kids who grew up with artist parents, we have that little wink between us. We know. Yeah, I know. And so I think when you grow up very knowledgeable of what the life of an artist is, I have actually spent a lot of time thinking about this, but sometimes too much knowledge can be
Mm,
something that can, sorry, I'm thinking of the Italian word, but it can be an hindrance in some ways, because I think with art, you like being an entrepreneur, you have to like not have a clue to an extent. I don't know if that makes any sense, but when you know so much, it's a little bit harder because you know what failure looks like.
right.
Whereas when you don't see that necessarily, then you can have a romantic view of it. And so you see all the struggles. You've been there, you've seen that as a kid. You grow up in that world and it has all its positive and its negatives. And on the positive side, I grew up essentially drawing from I think everybody says it was the only time I sat still, but basically scribbling in my high chair and drawing.
Hmm.
And there's the apocryphal tale that my mother tells of me drawing a table in perspective under a table at 2 years old in Spain or
Oh,
something like
wow.
that.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that was the language. That's what I did. There were no televisions around when we were kids. That's what we did. We made a lot of art. So art was, I guess, just omnipresent. And it was the method of, it wasn't necessarily anything we were either taught either. It's not like we had art lessons. We weren't set up like I think parents do
Mm,
now. We're like, we're going to do an activity. We're going to set things out for
right.
you. No, you got like the scraps in the printmaking studio, the bad prints, or you've got where like they've cut the paper down and you get the edges. So I have all my drawings from when I was a kid, which are on scraps of paper. You were you were being entertained with all of the kind of remnants of the studio, but it's I think different than what other people would think growing up with artists is.
And so it sounds like it just was like the water that you swam in. It didn't seem like there was the separation between art and life. The way I feel like you said activity time is what you spoke to. I think a lot of young people, young humans growing up, it's like I do this and I do that, and then I have playtime, and then there's art time, and art time exists in this window. And it
Yeah.
seems like for you, it was just always art time.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, my mother says that I'm a night owl, and my children have gotten that as well, unfortunately. But I did never liked the FOMO, right? I just learned that fear of missing
Hmm.
out. I did not want to go to bed at night, and my parents would be up like playing poker with their friends, especially in the country in the summer times, and I was not going to miss out on anything going on. But the deal was I had to stay in my room, and so my mother they put a little studio on my bed at the back of the bed so that I would just sit and draw at night to keep me in my room. And life hasn't really changed all that much. That's pretty much what I do is make art at night when everybody's gone to bed. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you'd mentioned that you were born in Italy. You made reference to growing up in a print studio. And so at that point, had your father co founded the Graphic Arts Center in Florence when you were a kid, or did that come a little later?
no, actually, okay. So I guess I'll have to back up. And so my father and my mother moved from the United States in 1968.
Mm,
And my father had gone to school at UCLA. When he got his MA at the time from UCLA, he had studied with John Paul Jones. And then he and my mother, who got her undergraduate at UCLA, moved. My mom's deaf. Also, a lot of background there. But my parents,
mm.
they'd been living in LA, but they were from the Midwest in St. Louis. My grandfather owned the Art Mart in St. Louis, so they had met when they were in St. Louis when my father worked at the Art Mart for my grandfather, not his father, my mother's father. And then
Yeah.
they had traveled to Europe together when my grandfather used to bring students over to Europe to travel and to study, which is interesting because, of course, you think legacy, right? So, but apple has not fallen too far from tree.
Huh?
And so that they met when my mother was 13 and my father was 15, and then they ended up going to college school at UCLA, and then at one point they had studied abroad in Spain, actually, and then they had traveled to Italy and fell in love with Florence, and so they knew they wanted to come back. So they moved in 1968, right after the flood, and then in 1970 the printmaking studio was founded with Michael Schnorr, Giuseppe Gattuso, an Italian artist, and my father, Dennis Olsen, whom many in the printmaking world know. And so the three of them founded the Santa Liberata Graphic Arts Center. And so that is where I essentially grew up as a small child, because I was born in 1975. So by then it was active, and they were doing courses for other university programs, and they were for local artists, and they were editioning prints. Some actually quite famous Italian artists had their prints editioned there. And so I remember as a small child coming into the printmaking studio and wandering into the back. I made my first print in the back. I remember sitting in there in his office and wandering in and out, because that's at the time we were living in Florence on Via della Vigna Vecchia, right next to the Bargello. And I have a lot of memories from that period of time. Florence was a very different place, but it's still, my father took a lot of photographs of that period of time. And it's this kind of romantic period of time in Italy. I think they talk about how inexpensive everything was, and things were so much that I think a really exciting time for artists to live in Florence. And then, but it got increasingly difficult, I think, just to live as an artist in Italy and run an art school. It wasn't a school, it was more of an atelier. So they did courses, but they were outsourced through other university programs. And then in 1981, we moved to the United States, to San Antonio, Texas, where my father had gotten a job teaching at the University of San Antonio, Texas. And that's when I left. But we came back every summer because when I was, I think, I had either was in my mother's belly or something. It was about one when we moved there, but we bought a house out in the country, two houses on the top of a hill. So this is very much this incredible story of young American artists moving to the top of a hill in Tuscany.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a ruined village, and it had been bombed during World War II and had been abandoned after that. So 7 houses, and our house we picked because it had a roof, which if it can give you any idea of the conditions, that first year was, I think, they tell the stories quite a year. There was no plumbing, electricity, no running water. My father put in the trace. I don't know what in English. That's where basically you have to put the lines of the electricity in by hand, these are old stone walls. Some of these walls are a meter thick because the house is about 800 years old. We figure we don't know exactly how old, but so anyway, we were the first ones in the village, and then the village filled out with other, mostly friends of my father and my mother. Norman Rockwell's son, Peter Rockwell, their son, Jeffrey and Tom, were students at a international school in Rome, and their teacher was, anyway, so they ended up coming out to help in what our family was called the Olsen work camp, where young people came to build walls. And there will be a few people who will chuckle at that. But so over the years, so it was also, we came back every summer to go and fix up the house. It was an ongoing project. That's what we used to do as a family, is sit around and talk about the projects that we want to do in the country. So the houses were part of a village in kind of the Casentino area called Giogalto, about an hour and a half from Florence, 2 hours if you ask. Consider I drive very slow. 45 minutes, it's my husband. But so I spent my summers on the top of a hill in Tuscany, and that's part of, I think, the creative side is there really wasn't, when I'm saying there was nothing to do, there was no television, because even if our tiny little television picked up like 2 channels, and generally like you'd have to stand and catch the antenna in the right position. So there was no television and not much in the way of toys. So we just played in the I would make potion out of grass, or we were
Uh-huh.
painting on rocks. And yeah, you made your own fun, and you were never dumb enough to tell anybody that you were bored, because you were immediately given a task to do, or a
Of
chore.
course.
You stayed away for fear that you might have to do something. So yeah, our playground was catching my brother, who would catch lizards and got very good at hypnotizing them and making them fall asleep. And our neighbors who like to eat snails. So we'd be like hunting for snails. And I would love to go like dig before they fixed up all the houses. They would imagine I'm an archaeologist and go find things. And there's just incredible stories through that village. Our neighbors had, before they sold the house right next to us, this is one of my earliest memories. The old owner his family had owned a button store. And when you walk, and I remember walking in, and there was this old woman in a chair, like all wearing black, and then this just mountain of buttons.
Oh my
It is a
gosh.
bizarre memory. And I think
Yeah.
it can't be real, but I know my father, I remember him saying, no, it was real. In fact, if you go all through our village, you find these old buttons everywhere. It's just kind of weird. So anyway, amongst other things, when it's an 800-year-old village, as a kid, you can imagine, ooh, I'm going to find something really old. But yeah, we always had some animals, chickens, ducks, stuff like that. So that's
It's
how I spent my summers.
incredible.
It's an
That just
unusual
sounds like
childhood.
I want to say like a something you'd read in a book or something, but I feel like even if you put it in a book, some editor would say too idyllic. No one will believe it. Take it
I
out.
know.
It just sounds like it's incredible landscape to develop an internal creative practice and creative life and be exposed to the wonders of entertaining oneself as a kid. And so, at what point in your personal arc as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as an artist, did you realize that, oh, I'm going to be stepping in as the president and CEO of my father's legacy of this school? Was that kind of always in the cards that this was going to be a family tradition, or was this something that snuck up on you?
I don't think I had any vision for what my life was going to be. The school itself, I moved to Italy as soon as I graduated from college. I was ready to go. I mean a week later. And the school, the Santa Reparata Graphic Arts Center, at the time, the manager had left. And so there wasn't anybody during the year, because my father he would come in the summers. And by then it was just him. Giuseppe had died. And the studio really just ran in the summers. And there were a number of summer programs that would come. But this space was probably, we're talking about maybe 1,500 square feet of space in a printmaking
Mm.
studio. And there was a small photography studio in the dungeon, literal dungeon. And when I came, my father said, before we leave, because they were on their way out, they had spent a semester in Italy, he went and put me on the bank account and said, would you just watch over it for us? And it had, because the person that had been there had left and he had been running it during the year. So I just watched over it. And then I had worked at another school, and I had also studied abroad. So I had some experience of what other alternatives to the way things were being run were. And then I started working full time as the studio manager. And then after having started, I managed the first semester program for the Washington University program. And then I realized that we were going to need to expand, or we were just too small of a
Mm.
space. And so I pitched it and I found this incredible
Mhm.
space, and it was a big leap. And my father was not much of a risk taker. He did take risks, but not this kind. He was
Uh-huh.
always very frugal. So that to get him to do things like this would have been my stepmom. She was the first person. And so then she was like, yeah, I took her. She saw it. She was like, yeah, we have to do this. So then we ganged up on him. Then we took on the space, which is on Via San Gallo 30. And that was our very first kind of venture into the full school program, essentially. And so from
Mhm.
there, I became the director of it. And they came in the summers and we did some summer. Anyway, but it started, that's how it began essentially. And so I was running the operations of the school from the very beginning. So that wasn't always maybe obvious to everybody how much participation was there from me at the
Right.
beginning, because he was the president. And so I was happy to do my job in the background to some extent as I got older, because I was quite young. And I think also so many of us women are, I don't know, we're just happy to stand on the sidelines and just even get some more my own self-confidence. And yeah, so it's been 25 years. And
Yeah.
then, my father passed away in 2015. I am now at the point I can talk about it without crying.
Mhm.
And we worked together. We talked on the phone every single day. It was like best friends. We fought like cats and dogs too. But we were also very similar. Like, he had an incredible sense of humor and I loved nothing other than to make him laugh. Like, we watched movies. He was very intellectually curious. And so we just always had a lot to talk about, politics and all of that. So it was, the loss of my father became something, it was bigger than, I don't know, I hate to say bigger than other people's loss of their parents. That sounds terrible. But I felt like I didn't just lose a parent, I lost like a best friend too, the one
Yeah.
person that I could connect with about certain things. And then also the person that I worked with. So it was a complex period of time. But since then,
Yeah.
I've now moved into the role of president and CEO, so from director, and it's changed. I have been really fortunate to have an incredible group of people that I work with. So Alexandra Rojas, she's taken over the role as the director, and I have been slowly learning to give up the reins. Or I think also we work so
I
closely
do.
together. Yeah, we work so closely together, and I always say we're like two halves of the same brain. I think I always say, if you can find that person that you really work well with and they can complement you, and it's an ideal situation. So we really have been running this together for a long time. And so it was an easy decision to pass the reins to a certain extent to her, but we still work very much together in all of the aspects of the school.
To give people who are listening maybe more of an idea of what it takes to run something like SRISA, what exactly is the difference between being a president and being a director?
That's a good question. I mean, mostly running the board. And I think it's been, let's see, when did that, it's been about a year and a half. So I'm still figuring that out. I'll let you know in a couple
Totally.
more years. But yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
it's also, it's not just that. I think also we're talking about it happened to coincide with it just coming back after COVID, which in and of itself was a bit monumental. Surviving COVID, we went from 100 to zero. A lot of businesses, they were hit and they went like, we did 20%. We did zero. I was able to raise like $20,000, and I've never worked so hard for 20. It took a lot of time to do that, but having to getting the school to survive through COVID was not easy. So yeah, so that was also the times that we were coming out of. And when we opened back up, it was still COVID. We were masking, everybody was, but we opened up not really knowing where we were going with it. But we have since we've done really well. And I think it's just a real testament to persevering. I think really when we went in, we didn't know where it was heading, but it was just, you just keep going and you hope for the best. And so that's what we did. And our enrollment is actually a lot better now than it was before. We've tripled in size.
Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
yeah, no. And I think a lot of it is just happy students.
The word of mouth of just continuing to put happy students back out into the world,
Yep.
that comes back, I think, better than almost any kind of marketing you could ever
It is
pay
the best form
for.
of marketing. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think that I think what we do is we do people. And
Uh-huh.
when I talk to my students, I actually mention this at times at the beginning of the semester, which is that you could be anywhere in the world if you're with the right people. I said, you could have the best
Mm.
time in an elevator if you're with the right people. And always try to remind them about that how important that is, and to make the effort to get along, to reach out, to engage. And I think that is probably one of the most important things that they'll take away, is because they've maybe had to leave their comfort zone, they've left their family, they've left, which a lot of them have done that because they've gone to college, but they're in a safe space because it's very familiar, and everybody when they get here is in a new space. It's completely new for everybody, and they're meeting new people. And so there's a lot of self-exploration. It definitely it reminds you of the importance of people. And I think that's one of the things that we've been able to do well, is really understand that. We've been the same group of people for a very long time. We're adding more people to that list, but we typically have, it's the same. I've been working with the same people for 20 years. That's not so happens very often, I think. And that's what most people will say about our school, which is that sense of community and how important that is. And I think we all learned how important that was during COVID, right? Everybody, all of a sudden, the community was gone. Now, I must say, artists, most of us, we had that time in the studio. So we were like, isn't it horrible? A little bit awesome. And feeling slightly guilty, because you're like, you mean I just gonna go work in the studio today. So I think creatives in some way had it perhaps easier than others, but all of us really realized how important it was to be around other human beings. And as I said, at some point, I was like, I want to be around somebody that I didn't give birth to or gave birth to me, because that's what that was it. Because my mom lived with us. And so I was just like, I got to see other people. And so I think just an important reminder that wherever you go, the people are going to be what makes it special, I think, anyway.
It's so incredibly true. Like, I've been in amazing places in this world with humans that weren't vibrating at the same tempo as me, and it hasn't been great. And then I've been in what could be mundane situations that are just incredibly elevated by the company that you keep. And that's so beautiful if that's the model, to put people at the center of it, because I think you will truly never ever go wrong if you do that. Yeah.
And I think that's so true. If you can keep in mind that you have the capacity, and also, I mean, making the effort to engage with whomever. And that's why I say, like, the elevator, because in the elevator, you're trapped with whomever you're trapped with, right? And so I think part of the elevator analogy was that sometimes those people may not be your ideal people, but in general, you can probably find something to connect with them, if nothing else, over the experience of it. You know what I mean? And so I think it reminds us that obviously sometimes you can find those really special people, but oftentimes it's the connections that we make just from the sharing of an experience. And I think that if you're open to that, and you're open to the fact that you're going to have different people with different ideas, and very much stuck in the elevator, so make the best of it. Sometimes it's ideal, sometimes it's not, but they can still be incredible experiences, even if they're not necessarily with the people that you would pick if you had a chance to.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important part of, let's see, I can feel like my therapist, like, saying, this is what we call opportunities. That it's, even as you say, it's even if there's some discomfort in that, that discomfort is an invitation to grow. I think whenever there's discomfort, it's something in you or something without you saying, all right, why is this sticky here? Why can't we move through this? And what better place to figure that out than in art school?
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, it is. And a lot of that gets figured out, not maybe completely, but you just start to ask the questions. I think we'll find that opportunity. I think we're not born as an art school, but we get students from other departments like business. And I say, I would much rather be a business student at an art school than an art student at a business school. Not that there's
Heck
anything wrong
yes.
with that by any stretch of the imagination. Most artists could take a couple of business classes and it would do them very well, myself included. But my point was that art schools have something in common, which is that there is a dialogue that exists within a creative classroom that's different. You are naturally more open because you're talking about personal things. If you're making work, you're oftentimes working through maybe things that are happening in your lives. Creative environments, aside from just the fact that people are being creative, just happens to be a more open environment. And so when you're there, and that just permeates, I think, throughout that is, if that's your identity as an institution, that permeates throughout the entire institution. And so even if it's not necessarily an art course, it still has that identity of a place where people come first, where there's an opportunity for sharing, where there's creativity. And so I think that so many people can benefit from that. Even if it's just adjacent to what they do, it's still part of it. And there's a way to see the world from a different perspective that can be really useful for people who need it. Because I think we're in a particular time right now with, I think we're all talking about AI and what's that going to do to everything, everybody's job. And I've been talking like, oh, the arts are going to be decimated. And I actually think that's totally not true. I actually think that it's going to strengthen the arts because the value of art is that it's made by a person, right? You're not going to buy a copy of a Picasso and spend $60 million for it. Right? Who made it is important. So I feel like the arts are going to be something that people are going to look to and need even more of. We're going to need to utilize those creative bones and figure out how to have creative solutions to things. And so anyway. I'm going very tangential here.
No, see, now this is what happens when we get together, Rebecca. So now,
I don't know how we're ever not going to completely go off into. We could do the 4-hour podcast easily.
We totally could,
and never mention printmaking. That would
Rebecca
be the
Olsen in 6 parts is the only way we'll fit this all in. But
absolutely,
just to, like, piggyback on that, one of the things I think about when people do some wailing and gnashing of teeth around AI and art is this fact that AI can only ever make what was made before in different forms. And it can do that in, I think, sometimes like admittedly impressive and bizarre ways, but there's no ghost in that machine. And what artists do, and of course you could be like, it's not what artists do. They just make pictures like based on what they've seen, but it's not like that because there is a ghost in our machine that is adding something, that is bringing a perspective that is, you can't obviously draw an oil painting of a vase if you've never seen a vase before, but we have that humanness that will always have a kind of innovation and a kind of way to connect to other humans that bits of electronic dust is just never going to have. So I do have a lot of empathy for some of that fear. I think for particularly people who are maybe in design, maybe sweating it. But I think that true creative value of art will forever be there. And I also think the true creative value of art making will always be there. Even if, okay, yes, I can ask AI model to make me, an elephant having a tea party. That's fine. I can see that. But the value I would get from designing that and making that myself goes away, even if Midjourney can make it in 2.5 seconds. Like the human experience of both making and receiving art made by a human, it's so in our bones that I have no worry that's going to stick around.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think art, it's there. There will always be the people that buy their art that came in the frame, and that's fine. that came with the frame, and those are maybe people who are like, "Why do I need to buy art? I can just say, make me whatever I want," and that's fine. But if you want the whole art world is made of people making things, and if right now with all the technology we have, we could easily just go make copies of things we like. I love Rothko. I could probably get a really good copy and put it on my wall, but but I don't. And I don't
Absolutely.
see that to be something that's going to happen. I just think that AI is going to be another tool in the toolkit. And then everybody's going to have to pivot, either learn how to use it, don't use it, or figure out how their field is going to change. I think there will be fields, illustration, design, are going to be more complicated. But again, you still need to feed the prompts. If you don't know anything, if you don't understand font, if you don't understand design history, you can't speak to doing anything. It's all going to look the same. It's like when people use it to create text. We're all starting to understand what AI sounds like, right? And we're like, oh, that's AI. It's effusive. It's this kind of language that's a little bit awkward. It just sounds a little not, a little too perfect, if a little
Yeah.
too effusive, a little too much. And the things that make things genuine typically are the failures, right? It's the mistakes. So you want things not perfect. No, it has some errors. There's something in it. That's what the human existence is. It's flawed. We are flawed. We are not perfect. And to want something that's perfect, I think then that's not how we're built. And I think failure is and imperfection is part of it. I love vintage furniture for that reason. I love all the little imperfections and the fact that you can see the life that that piece has had. And I think that we as humans value that. We have a sense of our own passage of time. Like, why do we keep pictures of the past? Because there's something hidden in the value of something physical. You and I, in our podcasting, there was a podcast I had listened to about I can't remember the name of it, but they were talking about the importance of the physical objects and what does a physical object hold for us. And I think it's an interesting thing. There is meaning beyond it. I had this conversation with my son. He did a whole project for his school on the role of artists in society. And I was saying this, why is this painting have value? It's really just paint on canvas. And the canvas was what, $3? The wood is $1. Why is this a $3,000 painting? Why is that a $60,000 painting? Why is that a $6 million painting? We decide that. And AI is just going to be another tool in our toolkit. And we will decide if it has value or not. And we will decide through the power of our purchasing ability and our desire to have it with it. And I think that the provenance of something, the history that objects have, is important to us. And we show that because we put things in our home that have meaning for us. We are meaningful animals and we love meaning. And I think that art is about having meaning in your home. It's why we keep something. My mother gave this to me. It has meaning.
Yeah.
So I think so.
What you're speaking to there is that the meaning is a vehicle for connection to other humans, right? Absolutely. You're saying like, this is here because it had meaning to my mother. I like this vintage furniture because it has these marks and scuffs from someone else's life. Right. If your chair had just been put in a rock tumbler and came out and was given to you, it wouldn't have the romance and that sort of bittersweetness of looking at the marks on it. But it has to do with feeling an interconnectedness with the past and then seeing yourself, I think, on a timeline in that sort of history. Yeah. And of course, art is such a huge part of that. And as you say, that the person, the maker that's at the heart of it, that you feel connected with when you experience an art piece is so important. And I think about when you were speaking, I was thinking about like Rothko. I totally agree. I love a Rothko. Rothko's fucking work on me. I stand there. I feel like I'm in a cathedral. Whatever he was going for, it works.
Yes.
And so I love Rothko, but then also I think about Ketty Kolvet and her prints of mothers and children and loss, and knowing her life story, knowing her story of being a German woman who was born in the decades to see both world wars and the losses that she had personally, that adds something to her work that is so tremendous for me and so human. And the fact that she had this genius that could capture that rawness that is as same for her as it was 800 years before her and 800 years from now, of that familial connection and powerlessness in the face of loss and death and war and illness. And that is the stuff that gets you up in the morning that I don't think AI will ever touch.
No, it might copy her.
Mm-hmm.
And you might see something spit out. I actually saw an incredible retrospective at the and it was at the MoMA just recently, and just really unbelievable work. And when I wasn't as familiar with her work. I'd seen it, but when I saw these people, I said she must have lost a child, because these are works from somebody who's experienced this loss. This is different than if there was something here. And yeah, the being so unbelievably moved by what loss does, and that vehicle of art as a form of therapy, as a form of communication, and just to be able to, I think, the ineffable, right? And I think we've talked about that within our own lives, about how hard it is to lose somebody who's so important to you, and then in some way feel like there aren't enough words in the English vocabulary to describe what that feels like. But somehow artists, you look at work and you say that's such the cliche, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but each medium has something to give. And I think that's the arts, is that we're able to communicate the ineffable. We are able to transmit something that words simply cannot in the same way. So I think they can try, because there's poetry. I don't know. Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
No,
but still, I think
yeah.
it's that. So yeah, I think I've always thought that if you really look at the anthropology of human beings and our development, I think art, creativity was really that point where humans became human. If you look back at early man, they were drawn on caves. There were cave paintings of buffaloes and people before there was anybody writing anything down. I think it is through that vehicle of drawing that language was born, that the written language was born. I think it's what made us human. And yeah, we're not going anywhere. I think like we creativity, and if you look at early man, it's the most natural thing. Like, they were painted and they were adorned, and their caves were souped up with lots of decoration. I think that is a really big part of our humanity, is that. And yeah, so I'm not worried. Not about that.
Yeah.
Other things
Not about
definitely
that.
bother me. I'm
Oh,
like a little worried about some other things, but
plenty of other things to worry us. But yeah, no, I think that's really wonderful, and to steer us back in. I
to
think it's
rein us into a conversation that's
to
directed
rein
towards
us
printmaking,
in.
maybe.
Is that it's, I think, all of those attitudes that you have and that passion that I think anyone can hear in your voice for it, it makes it, I would guess, such a wonderful thing to being a part of, offering the skills, offering the space, offering the time for people to come to SRISA and live and work and breathe art. And it just seems like a wonderful kind of destiny for someone who feels that way. Yeah.
No, it's the privilege of my lifetime to have been able to do something like this, to be able to have built us to, I don't think I would ever have possibly imagined the way my life went and continues to change, because there's always new things happening. But I don't think, and I think that's such a wonderful thing too. Isn't it great that when we start off our life, we don't exactly where it's going to go, and it's not prescribed for us, that we can really make it what we want. And I try to imbue that with the students and give them that sense of excitement that there's so much potential out there. Yes, things are difficult. Yes, things are challenging, but until you're there, you don't know yet. So you have all of that in front of you as a young person. I when I meet our young students, and I just think they're literally just like the embodiment of potential. As you get older, that's one of the things. What I see is I now have knowledge and have grasped some form of wisdom, but what I don't have is time, right? And so I have to be more selective about how I spend my time than when you're young. And it's just it is such a privilege to be able to spend time around young people, because that feeling of just being adjacent to people who are going to be taking over the world essentially from us. So the people that they will be around to see what happens with AI in 100 years. Maybe not 100, but I think
Who knows?
actually possibly. And there's a side of me that actually it's going a little fast for me. So I think I'll be ready to. I don't know that I really want to have my thoughts read by anything. It creeps me out. I'm like, I think I'm
That's
good.
fine. It's fine.
I'm good with this level of it. I think it's going to get to a point where I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe I'll pass. So I'm gonna do the go raise chickens on the top of the mountain. I think at that point I'm gonna peace out. I'll see how I'm gonna go make some prints in my studio in the country, and that'll be the end of me.
It sounds great.
Yes.
Yeah. Rebecca, this is, despite the fact that we're having a great time talking about AI and the human condition, it is a printmaking podcast. So I
Yes.
would love to hear about the printmaking program that you all have.
Yes. So keeping on task here, we're here to
Yes.
talk about printmaking. We started as a printmaking atelier, right? So we were involved in just in a really historic moment in Italy in printmaking, but we've since built the whole program, and given that was our history, we gave over very luxurious size to our printmaking studio. So our printmaking facilities are quite large and extensive. And we have 3 presses. We have a Takish press. Shout out to Takish. We have a little Conrad and a Bendini motorized press, 2 Bendini presses. So we have multiple presses. We're set up for silkscreen and intaglio, monoprint. So we have pretty sweet facilities, mostly because we're all passionate printmakers. I say photographers, printmakers and book artists. And interesting, the number of people that are book artists and printmakers at the school who work there, who are even just not teaching but working there, is pretty high. We are all really passionate about the field. And one of the things I always say, the world of printmaking is a community-based world, right? It's very different from, say, in the academia where you would have painters. They don't share information. And painters are the first ones to tell you this. They don't get together and say, hey, let me show you how I do this. Whereas printmakers do, mostly because you're working in a community space for the most part. And so you're used to sharing space. And so I always say that is where the heart of the school came from, the fact that community is where the heart of printmaking lies, right?
Yeah.
And you're often working with other artists. You're collaborating. Printmakers already work with other artists. So, they might be helping them edition print. So that's, I think, part of any kind of printmaking world, right? How many printmaking centers do you know are community based, right? It's all of us, right? That is a big part of who we are as an identity. So we offer printmaking courses during the fall and the spring, but our summers, we actually host quite a few faculty from all over the United States, a lot of people who have come for many years and maybe retired. Shout out Karen Coons, who now has Constellation Studios, and we've worked with Beauvais Lions has come, and lots of people pretty well known within the printmaking community. And I'm not going to name all of them. My capacity to recall names right now we've hosted so many different university programs over the years who will bring their own faculty, not just in printmaking. We give out facilities, so for photography and drawing and painting, and so we provide all the services. And this is such an incredible opportunity for artists who are teaching to be able to bring students, and even just professional artists. So Ron Picasso, you might know him. He's in Santa Fe. And he is, for I don't even know how many years, has been bringing groups every summer. He'll be doing his master class next summer. And it just goes really well. So for us, it's such an incredible opportunity to meet artists from all over the world, but it provides us with students who come through their own schools and join our own program that's running. It's been great for us. And I know so many people all over the United States now. So I'm really very fortunate to have worked with some pretty amazing people. We have on our advisors, Ruth Weisberg. She's retiring this summer from
Oh,
USC. She's
really?
such an incredible. She's such a, I think, been such a pillar of the art community, the printmaking community. I attend a lot of fairs where I talk to people about the importance of study abroad for students. But I think so many people neglect the importance of actually being able to come and teach abroad. Like, it's the faculty-led programs give that opportunity. And see, study abroad is not just for the students, it's for the faculty too. So many of the faculty that have come to us, their experience has really become something that's part of their life, right? And even in their work. So you'll see the influence of coming to Italy every summer or every other summer for 15 years. Also, because I think when you travel somewhere and you're transient, it's a different experience than when you go somewhere and you feel a sense of belonging there, right? Even if it's just for a month. If you've come back that second year, you see the same people. Anytime you travel and you get to feel like something is home, it's that special experience, right? And I know that with our visiting faculty, it's a really important component to what we offer, right? Is that opportunity to have a home away from home and to feel like you're a part of something when you travel. Yeah.
I can definitely speak to my own experiences of going and staying places for extended period of time, including Italy. And you're so right that it is, at least for me, one of the most enjoyable, profound, and affecting experiences that you can have is settling in somewhere that is once foreign and becomes familiar, and it gets a little bit in your bones and it never really leaves you. And Italy is an amazing place for something like that to happen. I actually had a question for you that's, I don't even know if it's a question, but just maybe give you an opportunity to speak to the enduring appeal of Italy for artists. It is ancient, and it has been my experience that it, even with all of the pressure that Italy gets put on it to be an artistic inspiration, it still lives up to the hype. It's amazing.
It's true.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of tourists. It just is what it is. And I said, it's Florence. Duh.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason people are coming here, and it's well merited. I've lived here for 25 years. I was born in Florence, and every time I walk into the Piazza Duomo or walk over and across the bridge and see the Ponte Vecchio, I'm still taken away. After all of these years, it's still stunningly beautiful. And there's really not anything that you can compare visually to. Venice is amazing. I think it's stunning, but it's more challenging from the perspective of living, I think. Florence is such an incredibly accessible place. I say it's like the gateway drug for travelers, right? Like, you go there and you're like, I want to travel now because it's easy. You can walk the entirety of it. You don't have to you don't have to go on public transportation, which is really nice. And really, the chances of eating badly is pretty slim. You're going to eat anywhere you are. I say if you can see the Duomo, maybe there's a chance that you're not going to eat well, but it's like the food is so amazing. And then you could live your whole life. You're not going to see every museum. There's so many museums and there's so much to see. And every single one of them is chock full of the most famous paintings you've ever,
Yeah, you just turn a corner and you're like, oh,
there it is. Yep.
Botticelli's Venus. Okay, all right. Yeah.
And so you get spoiled living in a city like Florence, that it's all there and there's so much to do and so much to see. And for me, I always get really excited when somebody comes of like friends or family for the first time, or you take out students to see something for the first time. I still love to see the expression on people's face when we walk into the Piazza Duomo.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like you can think, but you don't know, right? Like, you get there, you're like, wow, At the time, Brunelleschi's The Dome, that was the biggest dome in all of Europe. That was such an incredible architectural feat. And to this day, you look at it and you're like, that's pretty amazing. You're still taken away by it. So yeah, I think sometimes I think maybe I had moved to the States, but I realize I'm such an Italian. Like, I am so spoiled. I'm like, wait a minute. So the housing is fairly inexpensive compared to the rest of the world. I'm always going to eat well. Food is cheap. I can walk everywhere. And I'm surrounded by beauty. Why would I want to leave here? Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah.
Yep. Not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. And then also something that we've hardly had time to get into, but like, you're an artist yourself. You spoke to always being in your kid studio as a kid, but how has that been for you as someone who is running a large and complex and successful school, as well as being in this city of inspiration, as well as being a practicing artist, like through all of that? Like, how is that arc of your creative practice weave into all of this?
So I didn't really start a studio practice until about 18 years ago, and I think a lot of that, and I think initially was, I think where I was going at the beginning of the conversation, which was that when you grow up in the world, that's so familiar that sometimes you need to go off and explore the world first. And I think when I went to school, I changed majors from art because it felt I was too close to it and I needed some distance. I needed to be able to fail. And I was that kid who could draw really. It was just expected. And I think I didn't have I didn't feel, and that's different than having it, that I could fail. And I think you need to be able to fail because that's what propels you forward, right? It's fail well, fail often. And I remember I got a critique back once and it said, it was like drawing and one. And he said, this is great. Now you really need to think about what you want to say. And I said, yeah, I'm like 20. I don't really have anything to say yet. And I think I recognized that I needed to learn other things first. I needed to go out and get a little bit of distance from it. So I think I did more from art history and humanities. And then just the incredible amount of work that comes with building a school. Like, you're just there all the time and working a lot. But then it just became a loud noise I couldn't avoid, right? Where I have a very large doodle that's happened since we've been talking on the phone. I have to admit, I hope you can't hear me drawing, but it is a compulsion for me. Ultimately, the creative side for me, the school was just it was a large performance. I'm just kidding. Let's just say it was my first large creative project. And then it just got to the point where I needed to do that. And so I started really working towards my own studio practice, which I had to do silently in the background, right? Because it's not like you have a huge amount of time. Also because I was raising a family. And also because I went back to the not being able to fail situation. And so I had to be really quiet about it for a while. But I find that being an artist, and I work in a zillion different fields. I started with photography and painting and drawing. And then after, interestingly enough, my father passed away, printmaking. And yeah, I know. I'm sure a psychologist would go to town with that. But we're not going down that road right now. But and then sculpture, and then video and stop motions. I've been doing collage. And then so during COVID, I had done this handmade book where I was like, I'm going to put all of my hopes and goals for myself down. And one of them was, I want to make jewelry and maybe sell it. And then I'm supposed to be making a series of prints for a show that's coming up. And instead I go into the studio and I make jewelry out of a bunch of stuff that I have. So my kids go on vacation for a week. And for me, vacation is working in the studio. So I make all this jewelry out of found objects. And then 4 months later, I'm walking into the Whitney Museum and proposing my jewelry. And now I'm selling. And now I'm also a jeweler. So in addition to being an artist. And I have a show coming in November at the Hunt Gallery at Webster University. So that's a big solo exhibition coming. I have my work being sold right now exclusively at the Whitney, simply because I don't have time necessarily to have other venues, but that's been going really well. And then, raising 3 kids, 2 children and a stepson. So very busy, very busy. And I think really all of it's art, even children are a form of, I've created you. So I think it is all one and the same, which is there's creativity everywhere. I say to my kids, they're like, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know if I want to be an artist. And I said, artists are really everywhere. An artist had something to do with everything around us, right? From the clothes that you wear to the art on the walls. Somebody designed the table that you're eating at. Creative people are they've got their hand in everything. And so I think about the art schools that are struggling, like University of Arts in Philadelphia, that just went out of business. And it's a tragedy, because we tend, I think, maybe with the way things are going, people think, oh, you don't really need that. What part of your life wasn't involved with some creative person behind in the background? You don't realize that, but somebody's there. And I don't know. I think that there's something important there, some important lesson, which is the artists, the Renaissance, right? The most important period of time, the rebirth of science, the rebirth of the classics, and where all of a sudden there's this incredible explosion that came out of the arts. The artists and the scientists, that was one raw job, right? They were all Renaissance men. Unfortunately, men, also women. I'm sure there were a few. But they
Renaissance people. Yeah.
They were Renaissance people, yes. And so they were curious. They were exploring the world. There weren't these incredible divisions. You're an artist, you can't do science. It was, you're curious. You're exploring the world, and then you're capturing it by taking painting, and you're making your own chemicals. I just think it's to say that science isn't creative or art isn't scientific. I don't know. I think that they're all kind of part of the birthplace of new ideas, the testing of old. So, yeah.
And what you're saying about how it's art as a tool for investigating the world, I think is so true. And it rarely gets framed that way anymore. Art as an alternative form of knowing. I think it circles back a little bit to what we were talking about, emotional knowledge that you can get through art. All of that is really significantly intertwined and is something that is completely lost on people who think, oh, we're running out of money, we should cut the arts because that's the superfluous thing. What? And so I'm just happy to hear stories about schools like yours that are thriving, that are providing opportunities for teachers and students to come and have the real beautiful experiences that make up the good stuff of life, and that they can grow as people and learn about the world and learn about themselves through, because they're so necessary, I think, for living a worthwhile time while you're here.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Where can people find SRISA online? Maybe check out the catalog, get in touch with anyone, maybe look into seeing if they could teach a class there at some point. Where can that all be done?
Absolutely. Website. So SRISA.org, SRISA.org. And it's pretty simple. So I think that's the place that I would send people to. It'd be the easiest. And we're always looking to expand our community. So if there are people who want to come and take a class, and you don't have to be 20 years old either, actually. We quite have students who might just want to say, let me just come in, I want to take a class. Even if you're teaching and you just want to come and get away and you don't feel like teaching, you can just come and take, we have a lot of different classes. And so the non-traditional students are welcome as well.
Of course. We love them. Yes. Beautiful. Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Rebecca. It is such a delight always to talk to you. I truly feel very connected to you on a lot of levels. I feel like we're vibrating on the same wavelength, to borrow a metaphor from earlier in our conversation.
Yes.
And it's just delightful. And that's our show for this week. Join me again in 2 weeks' time when my guest will be Jake Ingram from Jackalope Editions. You won't want to miss it. And if you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help support the podcast and get bonus content like Shop Talk Shorts with past guests. But the very best thing you can do to support this podcast is listen, rate, follow, and share with your fellow print friends around the world. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you in 2 weeks.